welcome again to podcast Perikanan UGM, and I'm going to be your host today. And we have very special guest, Miss Catriona MacLeod, and we will have very interesting discussions today. Hi, Catriona. How are you?
Thank you, Ines. I'm very pleased to be here.
So, how do you feel about that? We are going to explore more about the seaweed productions and perhaps potentially in Indonesia.
Yes, no worries, Ines. I'm really excited to talk to you about that.
Yep.
It's something that in Indonesia you've been doing for a very long time now, but in Australia it's relatively new to us. So we're excited to be here to learn from you what you do and you do well, and maybe, hopefully, to bring a little bit of our expertise and understanding from coming to it as somebody that's relatively new. We're in Australia, I think, particularly interested in the sustainability aspects, and that's something I'm very interested in personally, but also in the sort of innovative and exciting new products that you might get out of seaweed, to try and look at it from a higher value production perspective. And I think we can share that understanding and that knowledge to build a connective industry to develop that's really exciting.
Oh wow, I didn't know that seaweed industry is actually pretty new in Australia compared to Indonesia. I thought the other way around. So how do you think for now in Indonesian perspective about the state of aquaculture productions, especially in seaweed in Indonesia? Perhaps you already have some informations.
I do, actually, and I was very lucky that people shared with me some information, and there's some very good reports out there that have been done. I'll give you an example. In terms of the scale of things, it's huge in Indonesia compared to, I think, in terms of seaweed production globally, you're amongst the top four, and I think actually Indonesia's just moved into the top two, so it's the second largest producer of seaweed in the world. And I was shared some information in Jakarta they were talking about the scale of production, and it gave me quite a shock to realize that from one of our bigger production companies here in Australia, back in Australia, they produce here in 1 week what we would produce in 1 year, and that's only from one region. So you guys produce
incredible.
an awful lot more of this than we do, but the industry going forward, I think we're starting to see a lot more interest than. So from Indonesia, my understanding is the bulk of the production goes to Catriona and M.Agr. In Australia, that's not really the market that we're looking at.
Right.
We are looking at food, but food in Australia, it's not commonplace. So we've got to actually educate people the value of seaweed, and that it is good to eat, that it is an interesting food supply, but also much more potential in Australia for the diversity of products like nutraceuticals, so skin creams, nutrient supplements, health products, through to as exciting opportunities in things like bioplastics. I've actually seen a surfboard fin made out of seaweed.
Amazing.
And through to even clothing. We're looking at fibre and stuff. So there's a lot more that perhaps that knowledge from Australia to Indonesia, you've got the quantities.
Right.
How can we look at what you can do that's a bit more high value, but you know how to grow it? Clearly, you know how to grow it. So there's a lot of information we get. And from the point of view of UGM, the collaboration UTAS has, we can see the opportunity for us to work together on this. And the opportunity for students is huge.
Oh, right. It's exciting to know that there are various products that can be derived from one single commodity in seaweed. But in the sense of sustainability, if I can highlight that perspective, what do you think about conducting it in sustainable way? Because there are some interest or perhaps obstacles that might occur along the way to produce some certain products.
Yeah. No, it's a really good question, Ines. So in terms of sustainability, having a product or production that has that level of opportunity could easily result in what a lot of people would call the gold rush mentality, where you
yeah.
throw a lot of money at something and everybody rushes to do it. It's the next big thing on the bandwagon, and often that's not good from a sustainability perspective. So what's really important is that as we develop this exciting new sector, we all come together and understand what it is we're looking to achieve here, so that people don't come in, fail and leave and the whole thing falls over. We want this to be a viable industry and a viable solution to many of the problems that we're facing at the moment for the long term. That means you've got to bring together government, researchers, industry people and the broader community, because if it's going to be long lasting, it has to be done in a mindful way with the community involvement. And what I've learned over many years is that it is not one size fits all. You can't take a new sector like seaweed and make it the same for every region you put it into, because the way that community operates will be different. So you have to be mindful of that. And I think that's a really big opportunity. It's what I'm hearing really good vibes in Indonesia about that people are actually thinking that way. So they're taking a step back, looking at the vast quantities that are produced here and saying, how do we do this really effectively? How do we make sure that this is an economically sustainable industry for our country, but also for our people, and not least of which the environment. And I'm a strong believer that if you do engage in an activity with that level of sustainability in mind, so you can have a business if it's not economically sustainable.
That's true.
But it won't be economically sustainable if it's not socially sustainable and environmentally sustainable. It'll last and burn for a very short, brief time, and then it will peter out and people will be left wanting. So that is really important, that we come together and we actually have those conversations to make sure if we're going to invest in this and we're going to commit to it, it's long term.
Wow, it's such a big concept, but then I also heard that you come all the way here to actually making people from different stakeholders to come together and talk about it actually. So different roles will speak up with what is actually the obstacles, and you're going to deliver some classes through the...
Yes.
How exciting is it?
Very exciting.
Can you explain to me what actually you are doing here in UGM?
Yeah, well, I'm very pleased. I've had a connection with UGM for a number of years now with colleagues that I've worked with. And so when they invited me to come and participate in this short course, the summer short course that's being run around seaweed sustainability, I was very pleased to be able to say yes. And I'm really excited. The students are from a whole range of different discipline areas, and there's some international students participating in this. I think it's 2 weeks all up. Anyway, I get to engage with them, and what I'm actually looking to bring out is that sustainability agenda, to talk to them about how they think when they come and discuss sustainability, that it's not just a single-minded focus, that they can, hopefully we can have some fun doing it, because it's something I've been really engaged with in my career. Some people have said I'm a bit like an enabler. I understand the different parts in people's perspectives, and I'm able to bring them together to start to share their understanding, so that they're not working against each other, they're working together to find the solution. And it's the only way to do it. If government is trying to manage from the point of view of the big stick, it's really hard to get people to do most people want to do the right thing. They want to be sustainable. They want to be part of the community. They want to facilitate and enable their community. We just need to come together and find the right path to do that.
How interesting. So you're mentioning about being an enabler, and it does take series of skills. Can you perhaps explain to us how to be as good as you are, become a success role model and an enabler to actively ask people to work together and then solving a problems to the sustainability?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I think it's curiosity. And I actually think that's a really important skill. Sometimes scientists, they underestimate how important the curiosity is to understand why somebody is doing something and doing it the way they're doing it, what their needs are. Like as a scientist, I think that's my first and fundamental. Everything I do, it's like, but why? And why does it do that? And what happens if it does this? And why not this way? It's exactly the same when you're talking about the conversations with people in business, in government, in the community. Once you know why they don't like something, or they do like something, or something's an opportunity, you can start to see the connection between people. It doesn't help the fact that I'm quite good at chatting a little bit. I'm not afraid to talk.
That is a really good skill, and it to be do a lot of practice to gain it.
Well, some people. So my husband would have said I have too much practice in talking.
Well, that's a gift then. So the next questions, it's going to be like, how do you think, how far actually the sustainability concepts in the terms of seaweed aquaculture or seaweed farming, is it we are nearly there or still far away?
Well, it depends what area you're looking at. In some systems and some species that we're, if you're talking about around the world, in some species we're probably further on than others. And as I said earlier, I think the big one is not to take it for granted that it's a tick in the box and done. Circumstances change all the time. So you could be looking at a different species, you could be looking at a different region. And in that region, things might interact differently. The other one that we have to bear in mind is that over the top of all of that is climate change. And climate change is affecting what used to be perfectly sustainable and is now more of a challenge. And I actually think that's the other advantage. I'm interrupting and picking up on this one, but one of the other advantages with seaweed that I see is the opportunities it has to help us deal with some of the big problems in climate change. So seaweed is very good at sucking up nutrients in the water, and one of the things we know is many of our industries, many of our practices put too many nutrients in the water. That's a really they're just growing seaweed, by virtue of growing it, you're actually sucking those nutrients up. So that's one way. But also seaweed you grow in the sea. Makes sense. You grow it in the sea, so you're not using fresh water to grow. So you can find a food source, a protein source that doesn't require arable land and fresh water. And that has an impact in food security and climate change and how we manage environmental impacts more broadly. So there's all of these other elements to be considered when you look at sustainability. I think it's an ongoing conversation. I truly don't believe that in anything we do, it's a tick in the box. You're growing this in a shared resource. You're growing it in the water column. So even if you're giving somebody a lease and they've got exclusivity to that lease, the water that moves through that lease goes to somewhere else. It goes to another place.
That's
so
true.
You are connected in a way that perhaps in terrestrial farming you aren't. So it's really important that conversation is ongoing about sustainability. And maybe even wider than the region you're working in, because it could be the broader interaction with the oceans that's affecting your ability to do what you're doing. So we just need to keep talking in that space.
So that's why it's really important to bring people together on the table and then talk about actually what are the challenges, because some challenges perhaps not occurs here, but it does impact somewhere else. And well, the exposure about those challenges is then very crucial in a way that you should mention. Then it's very important to make people really talk about it. Do you think nowadays people are really talk about the challenges, or they actually aware of the challenges occurs across the environment that they live in, whether the impact of the seaweed or also regarding to the, how do you say, the sustainability. So perhaps one community thinks what they are doing is sustainability just across their border, but they doesn't aware that the sustainability, the concept that they are think it's sustainable, is having impact on the other community, and there is no communications, will it cause how to say unbalance or potential frictions?
Yeah. I'm thinking about that one because it's a very good question. I think our problem, it's always a problem if people think they're functioning in isolation and they're only focused on their own agenda. I've worked with many colleagues, and one of the things I often say in many of when we're dealing with sustainability and trying to move practices forward, the term I often use is be careful what you wish for.
Oh.
Because often people will think they're doing something that's going to massively improve things, but they're only looking at their own little circle. And it's so often you can find, wow, when you actually look outside that, it's not the solution you thought it was.
Right.
I'll give you a little example that might help to explain that a little bit. I was working with colleagues around, it's in the fishery space, so your area, Ines.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of conversation for a while about using wild fish to feed farmed fish, and that it wasn't sustainable, particularly when the wild fish were not sustainably fished for. So they were over the quota limits, which you'll know very well. And everybody agreed that's not a sustainable practice. So they looked for alternative solutions to that. And the alternative solution was to feed plant-based proteins instead of the fish meal protein, which seemed like a very logical solution. And it is, except nobody takes into account that when you put those plant-based proteins into the fish you're feeding, maybe the fish don't like them quite as much as they like the fish meal proteins. So they don't digest them as well. So there's more waste material. The proteins you're putting in are terrestrially derived. It's not used to being in that system. That's the be careful what you wish for. Doesn't mean that it's not a good thing to do because you're protecting, but there's a consequence on the other side that maybe people hadn't predicted when they initially set out to solve the problem. And that's why you need a lot of people involved in the conversation. And there is nothing wrong with finding out you've made a mistake and going back and looking at it. Everybody does it.
Yeah.
I find that's the best thing. You did it with the best intentions. It wasn't the outcome you set out to do. Let's fix it.
Right.
And go back to that. So sustainability to me is a bit like that. Don't not do it because you think you're too worried about the things you've not captured. You have to move forward, but you have to be always mindful that maybe what you're doing is not quite the fix you thought it would be, and be prepared to change. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
It was a very roundabout discussion, but I do think that one sticks in my mind, that be careful what you wish for and always be prepared to change. And listen to people, because there are so many people may come into the conversation who see it just that little bit differently. And that's a good thing.
So you were saying that the practice of sustainability is actually a process. So
absolutely,
it's kind of like trial and error, but having an awareness that it might be impact negatively, and it's okay to give a pause and think about what's actually needed.
Yeah. And trial and error is a good way to look at it, but not trial and error without any input.
Right.
So that's why we're here.
It's going to be chaotic.
That's why we're here. Like I've said, there's people in Australia that know things about one aspect of this area, the seaweed development, and there's people in Indonesia at UGM that know a lot more in another area. So rather, I don't need to go out and learn the whole topic. I come and talk to you. I come and talk to people that know it. So that's a really important part, that we feel this collaboration. I'm talking here about UTAS and UGM, but also in terms of seaweed internationally. We need to learn from each other. Right. And we need to play to each other's strengths. So one area is doing it well in one point and one's doing it in the other. Let's bring them together, find the sweet spot, and we'll do it really well.
Yeah, so the next questions will be like how to actually connect the people, the expertise and the government all come together, and they are agreed on these big concepts and on the same page without, as you said, trying to have each of piece together, or the gold rush behavior, as you said. What is the main challenge to bring people together, actually?
Oh, that's a good question. The main challenge to bring people together. So I think so there's always going to be resourcing issues in that. So it's finding the opportunities. So for instance, this course has been a great opportunity for me to come and talk with the team here. So I saw it and I grabbed it. And I thought, I will go. And it's not just about teaching the students, which is fabulous. It's one of my favourite things to do is engaging with students. They've got new and fresh ways of thinking about things. And some of the best innovations come out of those kind of conversations. People who are not constrained by the knowledge that they have, the fixed formats of some of the knowledge that we have. So that's a really good one. The other is in an opportunity like seaweed development, there's quite a strong push from industry often to make this happen. They want it to happen. Often I find that they're very influential in government, and that starts the conversation. You know, somebody needing to do something is often a really good way to get it together. But we should, as academics, as members of the community, take advantage of that and make sure we insist on being part of the conversation. So it can't be driven just by industry, it can't be driven just by government, and it can't be driven just by academics. You need the tripartite to come together, and the community has to be part of that. I've never seen an operation that really does work if the community is not engaged with it. It will fail if it's not relevant to the local community that you're engaging in. So the more often you can have those opportunities to come together and share knowledge and discuss. Even the meetings I had on Monday, I had some really interesting ones with industry and government on Monday. It's actually everybody's aiming for the same end point. It's just they're coming at it from different paths. So making sure that people understand how to do that. I like seaweed's a really interesting one because there's a lot of hype around it at the moment. There's a lot of media, a lot of presence around it. So often it's not that hard to find the resourcing to get people talking about that one. Some of the other areas that we're involved with in fisheries and aquaculture are probably maybe still a little bit less easy to pull people together around. But I think the genuine willingness of people to make this happen it will bring people together to have the. Also, what I'm finding in the seaweed space that's quite interesting is, for example, from an Australian perspective, that lack of knowledge in particular areas is actually forcing us to look outside of our normal little cluster to find the expertise to talk to. And that's, we looked elsewhere and said, well, who's growing seaweed?
Right.
And how can we talk to them to help get this right? And that's quite a really good, important way to drive those conversations. Right.
So this also now your part as an enabler and connecting the peoples become like the really important and critical step to bring people together then.
Yeah, and so, I do love that the ability to be able to say, you should be talking to so-and-so, they know about this,
right,
is actually, it's a real joy to be able to do that, to be able to connect people up.
Amazing. So for you that have those set of skills or the potential set of skills like to talk to people and really curiosity, then you can learn more with Miss Catriona while she's here, or listen to this podcast, of course. Do you mind to tell us about how is it like studying at IMAS and become a lecturer? Why then you decided to become a scientist and researchers?
Okay, so why? We've already talked about that. It's the pure curiosity. I love every day at work because there's always interesting people, interesting questions to be answered, and interesting people to talk to. Why study at IMAS? Wow. I think we are, people need to look on the map. Tasmania is a little island at the bottom of Australia. We're a very friendly island. We're a very safe island. The IMAS community is exactly that. It is a community, and we multidisciplinary, but we're very cross-disciplinary. So we're not sitting in our office. We love getting out there and engaging. And actually, it really struck me, and I said this to Professor Alim yesterday, your statement, locally rooted, globally respected, is exactly the same value set as we espouse with our logo, which is for Tasmania to the world. So we see our actual value set is locally rooted, globally outreach. So we're so well aligned in that space.
And hopefully then we can have like future mutual collaborations then.
Absolutely.
With that same idea.
Absolutely. It just shows us how close we are.
Yeah, and amazing. Should we put a closing remark? Yeah, it's a bit very difficult one. Like try to put everything together in a perhaps 2 lines. What is the remarks of this discussions?
Oh, so 2 lines to summarize my view on,
or 3.
Yeah,
it's up to you.
So my experience so far in Indonesia has been incredibly welcoming. I've been the opportunity to connect with both the researchers and the students here, and I do find the students are as curious, as interested, as engaged, and as passionate as any students I've met anywhere, and particularly the students back in Australia. But I think the big one for me is the ability to feel like we can actually form a team.
Yeah.
So it's coming here, the ability to talk to the researchers, talk to the industry and the government people, and see there is a collaboration to be had. So that would be my sum up, is I feel I'm really enjoying the experience. I am learning a lot. I have learned so much in the last couple of days, but I do feel there's a collaboration here to be had.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, we wish for the same thing. So hopefully it will go to somewhere else.
Cool.
Is it somewhere else or go to at some point?
Yes, no. I'm very confident from the conversations we've had
Right.
that we will be working together more closely in the future.
Amazing. Yeah. Again, Catriona, thank you for your time today. It has been a lovely conversations, and thank you for all the listeners. And see you again at the next episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you.
Bye.
Bye.